Welcome back into the ASUG News Studio. My name is Tom Whalegum. I'm a co-editorial director of ASUGnews.com. Well, we're very happy to have two gentlemen in the studio today from Express Scripts. Thank you for being here, guys.
Thank you.
Especially to Bob Messenger, who's got a 10-day-old child welcoming, so we're happy he's here. And Brian Hammontree, also from Express Scripts as well. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So you guys are making an interesting presentation. That's why I think we picked you to get up here. Really about getting business people to take some ownership or to help you guys really develop the IT solutions. I think this is a fascinating topic. Probably easier said than done for a lot of people. But let's talk just a little bit about how this whole thing kind of started. Why did you decide to go down this route? Maybe Brian, we'll start with you.
Absolutely. One of the things that was the impetus for this was that we saw that there was a lot of shadow IT efforts within the organization, and because of that, there were a lot of different approaches to how the data should be written, how it should be analyzed, and oftentimes we might find that a senior executive would have a similar number produced by several different parts of the organization, and those numbers would conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And so we found that there was a reason to try to find a way to have consolidated data and a stable environment that we could report from.
The old one version of the truth,
Absolutely.
somewhat issue.
Exactly.
But also, you know, no offense to IT people, but sometimes it's hard to go around the IT people. They are ownership of all the technology systems.
Right.
What was the approach for there to make sure that you guys were not going to create friction?
From the IT side of it, what we really saw is that there were so many requests for reporting that it was more than we could handle at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea was, okay, let's work with the business. We can train them on how to do the reporting end of it, and we'll maintain the data side of it as well as the universe end of it, and then let them go ahead and run. The business end already knows the data much better than IT does, and so through the partnership, we were able to get a lot accomplished.
When you say trained, what does that mean? What did that encompass? I mean, that's a loaded word for some people, I think.
Right.
What does it actually mean?
We trained the users in a couple ways. We did have some business object partners come in and actually physically train the users on utilizing the tool and building reports out.
Okay.
We also held open forum type training sessions bi-weekly where any of the users could come in and bring any report that they were working on and any problems that they had or any questions, and they'd be addressed at that time.
Mm-hmm. Did that work?
Very well.
And absolutely, I can tell you that from Bob and I's perspective, I'm on the business side, and at the time that this was created, Bob was on the IT side, so what we have here is a collaboration between IT and the business, and I think we have powerful users within the business now, where once we were just being trained on it several years ago.
How did you get them to become, I mean, the power users can be an IT best friend, can be a business best friend, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
how did you guys, or did you actually have that vision to try and cultivate that this was going to be important, and how'd you do it?
Originally, the vision was to create self-sufficient business users, and then also create users that can push these self-service reports out to the internal environment itself, so that our customers as well internally could also run these reports and allow us to do this. So once it became apparent that we were able to use and leverage these tools, we just thought that there'd be a potential leapfrog ability for us to just do this. It just sort of, as we looked at it, it built upon itself.
Right.
The more and more users that we saw start using the tool and start creating their own reports, it just drew in more departments and more groups that then wanted to also learn how to make their own reports. And we really got a good culture of report writing.
What kind of reports are we talking about? I mean, how high level are these? How detailed were these? How business critical were these?
Absolutely. We had one report that Bob and I worked on for several months. We had one report before we were able to do it within BusinessObjects that would run on Access, and frankly it was too big for Access, and that's one of the problems that we had. Report's just too big. So this report ran on 3 different computers, and we needed to run it every 2 weeks.
Okay.
And it would run all day on these 3 computers in order to get it finished.
Wow.
We then were able to build it within BusinessObjects, and it is now self-service and runs in 2 minutes.
So what does that mean? So we hear that bandied about a lot. Self-service BI, all the analysts write it. What does that actually mean on a day-to-day ground level?
Absolutely. So we have account management within our company. They want to see this report. This particular report is called the alert report.
Okay.
They want to see this report. It tells them what's going on within their customers who are external customers, so that they can then consult with them. Well, they were only able to get it every 2 weeks and for a specific 50 customers.
Okay.
Now, because it's self-service, that external or that internal user for the external customer can run it at will any particular time and for greater than the 50 customers it was originally built for.
Wow.
Right. There's no lead time, the report is always available whenever they'd like to run it. So even if they come in after hours, it's still available, they can go ahead and run it.
So you guys obviously got the buy-in initially.
Right.
What have you done to kind of keep the ball rolling, maybe get some more power users, get the more, you know?
I think that goes to what Bob was talking about before,
Right.
and he can expand on it on the training forums.
Yep.
And so one thing we did is we expanded the data set that we originally had. So originally we had a certain amount of data, and once we got buy-in with so many users utilizing it, we got more data in there, which brought more departments in. Also, once departments really learned that they could go ahead and generate their own reports, and they could go ahead and create these, it was a lot of word of mouth of people just talking to somebody else, and then we get reached out to and say, oh, can I train my users how to do this?
Right.
And I think overall we've probably had 5 different training classes where somebody came in and trained users on building out reports, and it's been a very, very effective.
Did you keep it simple at first? I mean, I know you said there wasn't a ton of data in there. Was that by design?
By design, we were really just looking for utilization type information and just real simple information, what was sold.
Right.
And then as the needs grew, well, the data grew as well.
Where did you get that feedback from? Where did that come from? I mean, was it just coming to you saying, we want, how did that work? Well, I'd like to know.
Oftentimes, just like what Bob was saying, we'd have other departments come, and
Right.
Bob would use my group as, hey, here's our initial, phase 1 of the users who use this.
Right.
You talk to them and find out how they were able to get off Shadow IT, efforts get off of Access databases, et cetera.
Right.
And we would talk to them and they'd say, well, we need this table or we need this view, and then we would work with IT to get that in there. And then I would find out additional things that the business might need from my internal users, and then I would have to then source where that data is and then go to IT to say, I need this view now added to the universe.
Right. This kind of a change, it sounded like a pretty big change. Did that bubble up to more business side people who might have been like, oh, what are these guys? You know what I mean? I mean, is that kind of stuff? Because, obviously sometimes IT can be viewed as a roadblock, even though really it's not their fault. But this seemed like I hate to use win-win, I'm sorry about that, but did that kind of bubble up to more senior business side management and like, wow, look at what we're doing there?
And we are seeing that now.
Right.
When we approach this, we're a smaller branch of the company, and we really got a lot of uptake with it. And so the culture that we have is now being spread out through the rest of the enterprise, where they want to have the same kind of functionality or same ability with other data sets and other larger aspects of the company.
So are you going to just replicate the program that you did? How does that work?
You replicate the program. It's more of a process and an approach.
Okay.
Like we talked about before, the culture itself has to change to where we realize that we don't have to rely on a soup to nuts concept from IT. We can allow them to do what they do best, and then allow us, since we understand the data, to sort of skip a whole generation of scoping out and just let us scope that out, since we're very familiar with the data and what our customers know.
What do you mean by scope it out? What does that mean?
Oftentimes, through what we would have to do in the old process, if we needed sort of a report written, we would have to go to IT with what exactly the report would consult of. It would have to, what the look and feel would be.
All the requirements.
What all the requirements would be. And oftentimes that was an iterative process.
Okay.
And that would take time, because then it would need to be scoped with IT and where it fit within their bandwidth. Well, now, since we've allowed for a stable environment and BusinessObjects sitting on top of it, and we allow the business to have access to it, we can build in real time what our report should look like, what it should contain, and then when those things should change, we see how it looks, we want to change something about it, it's not a big effort now when the users do it, as opposed when we needed IT to do it.
Okay. That's a big change.
Right.
For you guys, does it free
It's nice.
up to do other value-added stuff,
Exactly.
I'm assuming.
And so we were able to really focus on harnessing the data, make very, very valuable data providable, and give it to the business to be able to do a report on.
Right. And I know, Brian, you mentioned too, talk about turning your team kind of to data jockeys to consultants. I mean, that must be a pretty strong thing too.
Yeah, I've been with Express Scripts for almost 6 years now, and when we first started, because of the way the data set we were working with was, we were, I hate the term, but I think it fits. We were data jockeys. We would just A request would come in and we would pump the data out. And we frankly didn't even know if the data looked wrong, we wouldn't necessarily know it at first because it was just data. So now what we've been able to do is sort of push off, because there's always going to be a need for a data dump. You know, an internal user needs a data dump, they need to know what's going on, a baseline number. So we allow those reports to be self-service. So now my team doesn't have to create those reports, doesn't have to deal with those reports. Now we're able to actually consult with the business, understand the data so that when we see a number, we know immediately something's wrong because we understand the baseline concept. And so what we've been able to do is take that strategic leap where instead of being data jockeys, we're able to take concepts from the business and look at what kind of products we want created, talk about the existence of current products, how we can tweak those, and then be able to launch real-time reporting simultaneously with a product launch. When historically that hasn't happened. We would launch a product and we'd be looking for reporting and we'd have to wait for it. Now we can launch simultaneous.
Great. We've been talking about data, getting data used. We haven't mentioned HANA once. Is that of interest? Are you guys fast enough where you are, where you want to be right now? Would that be? I'm just more my curiosity.
Yeah, we were actually just
I'm not
talking about
pitching.
this earlier.
We talked to somebody from SAP earlier about HANA.
Yes.
Is it of interest? Would it help, you think?
Faster is always better.
Yep.
And so obviously it would be of interest, but I just don't know very much about it.
Right, it's on your radar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So what would I'm going to ask each of you one piece of advice for someone who's watching this who would want to maybe think about starting this, thinks really interesting. What would be your one piece of advice? And we'll start with Brian.
Sure. I think my one piece of advice is just be open to change. I fear that all times within organizations, this is the way we do it, so this is the way we do it. We have to be open to question the way we do things and look for that better way of doing it so that we can take that next step. Yep. So just be open to change.
Yep.
And I guess the advice I give is make sure you lay out definite roles and responsibilities. If you're going to split the work between IT and the business, everybody needs to know exactly what they're working on.
Right. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming by. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
For more interviews with ASUG members and SAP newsmakers, please check out asugonline.com as well as ASUG TV on our YouTube page. And thank you very much for watching.